Record. And Michael, we'll get started in about a minute. Let me go ahead and my Facebook.
I like his background. That's pretty good.
Michael, turn your.
I need to go there.
I need to go there too. I need to get away from here. Michael, go ahead and turn on your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I had that on mute.
Well, welcome, Michael. Welcome, Michael Cortina. Welcome to Investor Party. So it's so good to see you again. It's so good to hear from you again.
Great to see you too. And yes, I'm coming to you guys from Aruba. Nelson really pumped. I figured I'd take time away from my vacation.
Well,
not really. It's just a virtual background.
Just in time, because from what I heard, winters in Chicago are kind of brutal.
They're the worst. They're the worst. I did it for 8 years. They're the worst.
Is that true, Michael?
Well, then there you go. Bo. Yeah, they're not such a good time. Nothing like this.
Well, lives in Miami now, so kind of different. I don't know. A little different.
His background is sort of my backyard, except not today because it's cloudy and the wind's blowing at like 30 miles an hour because, a cold front. So yeah, that's always fun.
Oh, that makes sense. Well, Michael, I'm so glad to have you. Welcome to Investor Party. So every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have party chatter calls where we bring in entrepreneurs who are into real estate investing, financial market investing, and who have philanthropy built into their business systems as well. So we are a mastermind of entrepreneurs and investors. We come together because we give back to the community. We have lots to share, and I'm so glad to have you because we always have all these different topics about business, about investing. Even though you see about 5 other people, the Investor Party community is about 120, 130. We get new members all the time. We're streaming on Facebook right now, so I don't know. I'm actually not paying attention to Facebook right now. I have no idea who's watching. But we also save these, and the community gets a chance to watch them on YouTube whenever they have a chance. So that's how the structure is. So Michael, welcome. You and I are going to be talking about mental health. You and I are going to be talking about investing and entrepreneurship. So I'm so excited to figuratively speaking, pick your brain when it goes to those topics. Yeah. So Michael, from LinkedIn, how would you explain yourself? How would you describe yourself?
Well, what a great intro. Thanks. That was one of the things that really appealed to me when you told me about this community and you told me about Investor Party and what you guys are up to as far as not only investments, but the philanthropy and giving back to the community. I was instantly energized by joining with this group in terms of your mission, your values. So I'm thrilled to be here. And thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, I would describe, that's a great question to start us off here. What I do is I provide brain optimization processes to help people achieve peak performance and emotional wellness.
Mm-hmm.
If you think of it sort of like mindset transformation, only with a real brain-based, neuroscience-based understanding behind what drives the intervention. Not to be confused, let me just go ahead and get this distinction out of the way, right out of the gate. Not to be confused with therapy or counseling or traditional therapy.
Okay.
I've done that certainly in my career. I've done, traditional therapy. This is about the exact opposite of that. So if you think of traditional therapy, this is about a 180, the complete opposite of that in terms of process, efficiency, and outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Explain that in simple terms. So who do you work with and how do you go about a person and explain to them that you can help them?
Okay, very well. So let's just start with what brain optimization is. And it's most foundational terms. It's a process of getting the brain to respond to life in the most enticing and optimal way possible.
Mm-hmm.
You think about life, that's truly what it is. It's that simple, and it's about getting the brain to respond to life in the most enticing and optimal way possible. Think about, there's events, there's inputs that are actively coming in, there's experiences, there's memories, there's projections, what's to come in the future.
Mm-hmm.
All of these scenarios, whether it's something that's active and incoming and happening right now, or it's a memory of something that has already transpired, or it's something coming up, in the future. Our brains have a way of going with us wherever we go. They accompany
Mm-hmm.
our brains, our mindset, they go wherever we go. And so think of it like this: the brain is an organ,
Mm-hmm.
just like any other organ. And just like any other organ, just like your liver or your lungs or your gallbladder or your heart can experience dis-ease,
Mm-hmm.
so too can the brain. And so there's really no shame in it. It just happens. The brain goes with us wherever we go, which sometimes is a beautiful thing. We're like really on our A game. And other times it's an absolute train wreck. You're thinking, I wish my brain would have stayed at home on the pillow and I was
Uh-huh.
meeting, and even if I just zoned out like a zombie, I would have been more productive to that group and that meeting had my brain been at home.
Mm-hmm.
Just part of the condition, the human condition. And so this has a really, if you think about it this way, it has an interesting dynamic that I've seen play out sometimes in various corporate environments in particular.
Okay.
It's supposed to have no place. There's no place for emotions and for brain and business. This is business.
Right.
Think about, um, if you think about, imagine somebody saying, the meeting's about to begin, check your gallbladder at the door. Just go ahead, check your gallbladder and come on into the meeting. And you think, well,
Hmm.
that's absolutely ridiculous. That's
Yeah.
nobody's going to do that. And yet there's this unwritten expectation sometimes that that's what ought to be happening with how our brain functions and how our emotions get involved into various things. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting that it's a good idea to be throwing up emotions at the most intimate and highest level of detail in every meeting that you ever attend. But this stigma, this expectation that it doesn't accompany us and have impact on what we're doing is bananas, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk about today, if it makes sense, we'll talk about the impact of stress and some of the function of emotions, and we could touch on trauma, because these things, in particular, in this day and age, and you know, I serve high level professionals, CEOs, entrepreneurs, veterans. I serve all of the above. And particularly in this day and age, with everything that's going on, there's a lot of noise out there on lots of levels.
Right.
Stress levels are like the volumes are turned way up. People are,
Yeah.
and so I would love to, if that fits with what you want to get into.
Absolutely.
Share some.
Let's talk about that. And when you and I were debriefing before getting on this call, I shared that many of us in the community, though we're entrepreneurs, we became entrepreneurs because of our life stories. There was something in our past. It could be traumatic. It could be some type of challenge that we saw business and opening up our own business, opening up real estate investments, opening up financial market investments gave us a platform in order to improve our life and go for a quality of life that we have never known for ourselves. And we want to, it's more transformational for us. So building our own businesses, we have an emotional stake in it. And so I was sharing with you with that. I would love to talk to you about the growing pains of that, stress, how our past and experiences formed the entrepreneurs that we are today.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great point. So much of our life experience absolutely fuels what we find ourselves involved in the here and now,
Mm-hmm.
and future pacing as far as goal setting and impact and legacy that we look to leave, um, in terms of others. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think stress, when I think stress, it's really interesting because you'll hear, of course, all of the adverse impact it can have on entrepreneurs.
Right.
Stress can impact, it can have detrimental impact on sleeping, on eating, on emotions, on
Mm-hmm.
cognitive capacity and ability to function, on relationships and how we're maybe shorter with people than we otherwise might be, on our physical health and well-being. You hear on and on the list goes. And one of the stress leads to many things. Among them is fear. And it
Mm-hmm.
can induce at a very deep level fear in individuals. And what happens then is that people will say, I'm stressed out because of X and I'm afraid of such and such. And I say, no, you're not.
Hmm.
They look at me, excuse me? I say, yeah, so many people are walking around thinking that they're stressed and fearful of certain things that couldn't be further from the truth if you apply brain science to it.
Oh.
So I'll give you an example to illustrate this point. I was working with an individual who he had come to me and he said, he has this fear of rejection, just fear of rejection. It's impacting, his life as it were years ago on college, and it's impacting his life on as he plans to make a business, and it's impacting
Mm-hmm.
relationships. He has a fear of rejection, and I said, so how does this thing play out? And he says, well, let's take a relationship. He says, you know, I'm afraid of being rejected, so I don't even pursue a relationship. I said,
Mm-hmm.
I see. And where did you learn that you had this fear of rejection? He said, well, um, the self-help aisle at Borders and my therapist. I said, oh, that figures.
Yeah. Common.
I said, yeah, very common. And
Yeah.
I said, okay. I said, so let's play this out. You mentioned there was a young lady you were interested in. And he said, yes. And I said, so let's imagine you walk up to her on the campus and you say, hey, would you like to, go get a coffee? And she says, no. He says, well, not the answer I'm looking for, but yeah, whatever. I go, yeah, you can handle that, right? He says, yeah.
Mhm.
I say, let's say you go up to her and you say, hey, would you like to get a cup of coffee? And she says, I'm in a relationship. Sorry. He's like, yeah, well, whatever. She's with somebody. You go up to her and you say, would you like to get a cup of coffee? And she says, I'm just not interested. Yeah, fine. I go, okay. So what about this? Let's say you walk up to her. Do you fear this? That you say, would you like to get a cup of coffee? And she lunges forward, bites your larynx out. There's a blood fountain shooting out of your neck.
Oh my God. Be afraid.
Are you bananas?
Sounds like what might happen tomorrow.
I know. Oh yeah. Duck and cover, everyone.
I said, so are you fearful that she's gonna like bite your throat out and leave like a blood shower shooting everywhere? And he's like, well, no, man, no, that's just nuts. And I say, well, see, that's actually how the brain is processing it, though. It's processing it as death imminent. That
Uh-huh.
there's going to be this ultimate destruction if it doesn't happen. The part of your brain that's responsible for generating a response of fear doesn't even know what the heck rejection is. It's really primitive. It responds on an instinctual level.
Hmm.
And he said, well, that's just funny. I said, so see, there you go, friend. You have no fear of rejection. You could handle her saying no just fine. It's not what you're looking for, but you'll handle it and you'll be fine and you move on. And
Hmm.
he says, well, yeah. And I said, so what do you think? He says, I think I'm walking right up to her. I said, there you go. Um, so the fear, worst case scenario, he's not afraid of rejection. This is just what self-help and all this is what society has put into his head. It couldn't be further from the truth. He could handle rejection just fine. The brain is processing this at a really primitive level, which is why it won't make any sense to intellectual part of the brain. It kind of sounds kind of out there. But this part of the brain that's primitive, that generates these strong emotions like fear and anger and panic, doesn't have the capacity to use
Hmm.
logic.
Hmm.
And so I said, at the worst, maybe you're concerned that she might do this, that you walk up to her and you say, hey, would you like to get a cup of coffee? And she says, hold that thought. And she grabs her phone and she calls her friend and she says, hey, Susie, you got to get down here. You got to see this guy who actually thinks he's in the same league as me. Come down here so we can have a good laugh at him. Maybe you're concerned about contempt.
Mm-hmm.
Rejection, not so much, not at all. So when people are walking around and they're experiencing these high volumes of stress, and it bleeds into fear. What if this doesn't happen? What if this deal doesn't go through? And then people start carrying this in their bodies and they start to experience various symptoms of it, whether it's emotionally, intellectually, ability to focus, physically, tension. The brain is reading this substantially different
Mm.
than what you and I would consider, normal or within the realms of normal. And it makes no logical sense, which is why people, don't really get it. But when you think about what the brain is designed to do, let's figure then that let me pause there before I start to get into a bit in the function and purpose of emotions. Is that making some sense at all?
So I had a correlation. So many of us are in business, and given the economic times, some of the things and emotions that the emotions that tend to be on everyone's mind, one, it's going to be about money, and two, it's going to be about the elections. I think it's safe to assume everyone is just a little stressed over this time, whether it be fear, whether it be anxiety. Let's talk about money, since we are in a business context. So many of us do have this fear.
I think it may have froze up here.
Technical glitch. Yeah. Bear with us 1 minute.
No problem.
Let's see if he responds to that really quick. Sorry, everyone.
Oops.
Zoom has a mind of its own sometimes, unfortunately, or maybe something happened. Let's hope not.
Yeah, this is
Yeah, no, he'll come right back in. So you're in Chicago, right?
I'm in greater Chicago. I'm about 45 minutes outside of downtown Chicago. Yeah.
Okay. North or south or west, actually?
So I'm actually, where I'm at now is actually in Northwest Indiana.
Okay.
Grew up on the south suburbs of Chicago. And where I'm at is about 10, 15 minutes from the Illinois border and about 45 minutes from downtown Chicago proper.
So where are you, around Highland?
Oh, okay, I'm in Cherville.
Okay. All right.
Just a little south of Highland, yeah. And it's a much more tax-friendly environment. So being just on the
Understood that. Yeah.
just on the other side of the border has a lot of value from a property tax standpoint, especially.
Understood for sure. Nelson. Yeah, he just said to go ahead, keep talking. Sorry. So whatever our conversation was that we were having, whatever you were talking about, he said he'll be right back on. So apologize for that.
No worries. I'll keep rolling here then. Well, let's go then with the oh, looks like he's coming back.
You're muted. Okay,
We
continue,
good?
Michael.
Yeah.
So, if you think about then let's figure that one of the functions, a function then of emotion is protection, is to generate an action, to generate protection. The most powerful response of these are anger and fear. So what happens is if you if you think of, well, over the summer, I was taking my puppy for a walk, and there was this other dog in the neighborhood that just had puppies. And this dog came up, growling and barking and in absolute defense mode because her puppies were there in the enclosure with her. And so that is all rooted in leave my babies alone, get out of here, powerful response. Now, as I'm on the other side of the block, do you suppose that that dog was still barking and growling and howling? No. And the reason why is for the instinctual part of our brains, which we share in common with our furry friends in nature there, it's the reason I mentioned that, is that once it's over, it's over. And she's done with it. You don't see dogs just, sitting around holding a grudge. Her one puppy comes up to her and says, "The nerve of that guy! Do you believe how close he got to our enclosure when we're this young?" It just doesn't happen. So dogs aren't sitting around holding a grudge. The brain, it responds to what's happening here and now. Boom! Instantly updates and
Mhm.
fully present in the present moment. Humans, because of this more advanced component that we have and all the meaning that we apply and the value-based judgment that our brains give things, well, then
Mhm.
it could take us forever to move on from a slight or from something that happened. And and so when we're talking about brain optimization, it's about getting it such that the brain no longer responds to these things, these triggers, if you will. And they just no longer have the ability to have that impact on you as you move forward.
Mhm. So now that we established a lot of our reactions, for lack of better words, bear with me, is our triggers. It sounds like it is more primitive than what we give it value for that, but we place a lot of value into the stories that we have around it. It could be, for example, a fear of not making enough or anything, but we're not actually afraid of money. We're afraid of something else. There's something else that is causing that affect, that emotional context to it. If we have the visibility in that, then what's the next step? How, then what? What do we do, Michael?
So that'll vary. If the visibility is there, and once
Mm-hmm.
the visibility is there, and then let's say somebody says, "Oh, I see this for what it is," and wow, how silly! I'm not gonna let that, push buttons anymore, and I'm like really good. Then rock on, live life, and
Mm-hmm.
enjoy moving forward. Unfortunately, for many people, um, that's not the case. It doesn't happen like that. And the reason why is this. You, you see, I don't think that people are waking up every day saying, "Today's the day. Today's it. I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to try as hard as I possibly can,
Mm-hmm.
feel as lousy as I can. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
put my best foot forward and really try to just mess up this business deal and just screw it all up." I don't think people are choosing this. Hence,
Mm-hmm.
if they're not choosing to feel lousy, how can they choose to not feel lousy? It's something that's operating on a much deeper level of mind. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with really, really intelligent people, quite frankly, people more intelligent than me. I've had heart surgeons and you know um, psychiatrists who certainly know more about the brain than me sitting across from me getting my services. And why is that? Well, it tells you it's not a problem of intellect. It's not a problem of thought process per se. If it were that simple, people would just say, "I think I want to feel better, and now I choose to feel better." And boom, there you go. I wouldn't even have an
Mm-hmm.
issue. I'd have to, I'd have to go do something else. I'd have to do real estate full time. I'd
Mm-hmm.
have to have a completely other. My industry wouldn't exist if it were that simple. So
Mm-hmm.
happening, I have, high level entrepreneurs in these specialty positions, and they're sitting across from me that tells you clearly it's not an intellectual problem. And so when that's the case, Nelson, then
Mm-hmm.
what has to happen is a experiential collaborative process of getting the brain to reprocess the way it's reading that data set. It's really what it is,
Mm-hmm.
data set. And in
Mm-hmm.
particular, when people have experienced trauma, let's just use a categorical umbrella of trauma, what has happened is they've experienced some events or events that then laid down its neural tracks in the brain as a traumatic memory, such that anytime that it comes up, the memory of it or a trigger of it or a word or a person or any sort of trigger, then it can reactivate and the brain is reading it as if it's actually happening again, which is why people get kind of keyed up and there's
Mm-hmm.
nervous system activity. There's um, the sympathetic nervous system activates. Well, it's because
Mm-hmm.
the way this trauma memory was originally stored and the way its neural tracks were laid down in the brain was in the emotional part of the brain. The answer to that, the resolution to that, and this is why, uh, I'm just going to say it. Forgive me if this is why I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder with the whole self help movement, because
Mm-hmm.
self help, the overwhelming majority of self help out there is conscious level. It's talking about people about things like PMA. Oh, have a positive mental attitude and think this and think that. Well, people aren't thinking themselves into feel lousy. There's a lot of bright people out there who are struggling. It's clearly not a process of thought. So
Mm-hmm.
when I see, and furthermore, it's a wonderful way of keeping people dependent. If that's how you like your business model, I so much don't. Keeps
Mm-hmm.
people coming back to you because, well, things never really get resolved. You're only applying a band-aid to a broken femur. The leg is broken and you're throwing a band-aid on it by saying, hey, think positive or shift
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts. It's really not getting to the root. To really get this resolved, you have to experientially, because that's how it happened originally. It was an experience. Experientially have a process of connecting with somebody who can get the brain to then reprocess the way that data, those neural tracks have been laid down, such that it no longer continues to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm making sense. Is that making any sense?
Yeah, let me give you, I always like doing this with guests also is role playing to be a little bit more tangible of how you work. So let's say that I came across your profile and I've had my years of therapy. I had some traumatic experience as a child and it still resonates. And I noticed that when I'm building my business or actually progressing through life, I'll pick one thing. Actually, I'll talk truly about myself is when people raise their voice, when people yell, and I automatically feel a trigger. I either get defensive, I feel, to be honest, I feel like it, even in my thought process, I will feel like I'm going to get physically harmed because that's just kind of my background when I grew up as a child. Um, and I'm intrigued by your particular approach. Would I be someone you would want to work with?
Oh, absolutely. And what that tells you there, see, there's a perfect example. Thank you for really making this much more impactful and substantial. You're a very bright guy, and you've connected the dots. You have the insights. You could say, well, I understand my reaction in the here and now, and I also correlate it to, I've experienced some stuff, and and you sort of put this all together, and perhaps it's better than it was, but
Mm-hmm.
still not as good as I would want it for you. So the
Mm-hmm.
example you just shared would be a perfect example of somebody who I would work with and look to get that resolved in short order, by the way.
Mm-hmm. And because I am intrigued, I'm like, this is, I really did accurately describe what I go through on a mental level. Like, and I do get triggered, and I do have my experiences that I just sometimes can't shake off. Um, what would a program? What would how would your services be rendered to me? Do I my frame of reference is going to see my therapist 1 to 2 hours a week? Is it? But it's clear it's not therapy. So what kind of action plan or what kind of program would you offer me?
So with that specifically, what you just referenced right there, and
Mm-hmm.
And I offer lots of different sort of programs that just all tailor fitted to what's going to best meet that individual's needs. But based on what
Mm,
you described right there,
yeah.
my recommendation for the services that I offer would be that we would meet for one visit. And at the conclusion of that visit, that would no longer be an issue for you. That would be what we would be looking to get done. So that
Really?
absolutely, it's completed, defeated, done. And when I mentioned earlier that
Mm,
some of the structural components that make the brain optimization work different, one is effectiveness, two is efficiency, three is process. Well, number two, efficiency, there you go. What you've described, I've met with countless people um, for one visit. And I've done follow up, because when I first started learning about this kind of work, I was intrigued, and I had my little, kind of one eyebrow raised. I was a little bit skeptical. It was so different from everything that
both
I
at the same time?
it's usually the response I get. I usually get intrigue and skepticism or a little both, which is fine. I
Yeah,
get it. I know where I was when I first started learning about this, and
yeah,
I've had some of this done to myself. I've experienced it, so I know
yeah.
what the process is like, to come out that other end of it and be like, it's like done. Holy smokes. Um, so yeah, I've done follow-up with people because I know this is different than the other therapy I've done throughout my career. So I have this
Mhm.
monster Excel database. I've tracked all my data. I've done follow-up 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12.
Right.
The farthest or the largest amount of time I received feedback from post visit, one was 4.5 years and one was 6 years after visit, and the thing was still resolved.
Hmm. Now, you just hit on something because obviously your career path is, well, is different than others. So there must have been something in your personal life or your professional career that made you segue in this particular direction. How did you find yourself in this particular line, um, in path in order to deliver to other people? How did you get here?
Yeah, so again, I sort of went the traditional route, undergrad and graduate school, and then started, practicing therapy, received my supervision hours, got licensed,
Yeah.
and practiced for well over a decade. And
Hmm.
I became frustrated, to be frank, with the lack of effectiveness. I mean, if you look up the effectiveness rates of outpatient psychotherapy, they're not real
Uh-huh.
impressive. And I fell right in that bucket. I mean, sure, there were some success cases that I collaborated with people on, but nowhere near as many as I wanted for the people that I was serving. Number two was the process, particularly
Hmm.
if somebody had experienced pain, then the process was they had to relive all of this pain and horror all over again in my office. So I was going
Mm,
through
yeah. Yeah.
rainforest worth of Kleenex, and I was like, this is just got to be a better way. And then they would come back the next week, and it was like they felt better when they left the visit, but then they came back the next week, and they're like, well, no, it's still not resolved. I'm still bothered by X.
Hmm.
And so I thought about getting out of the field altogether, and that's when I actually started getting into income properties, because I was thinking I might just get out of this field. I was not liking the results, and then I picked up a duplex, and I had two left hands. I was not very handy at all.
Many of us are not. You're not alone.
I might have a hand and a half now. I've learned a few things, but anyway, thankfully I had an older mentor who was extremely handy, and we picked up this duplex. It was just a train wreck, and we rehabbed it. And I thought, wow, how beautiful that was to see sort of the before and the after. Now it's actually livable, and we could bring people in here with like a clear mind and good conscience that this is livable for you, and it's a nice place. And I
Mhm.
remember wanting that in my clinical work, and I just wasn't getting it. So then that's what compelled me to start doing research and finding things that are outside the box, outside of the
Mm.
traditional stuff that I learned. And so I
Mhm.
went to institutes and I did my own self-research, self-training. I went to, webinars and trainings, all different places, and started getting all of this information and seeing really profound things happening. Uh,
Mhm.
as it would be, I experienced my own trauma during these years, and
Mhm.
it was an event that like I couldn't talk about it. I just couldn't talk about it at all. If I tried to talk about it, like I couldn't get through it without just breaking down or what have you. And during one of the trainings, I went to a lot of different places to receive all kinds of different training. During one of the trainings, somebody worked with me on that, and they said, "Hey,
Mhm.
we're looking to get this resolved, like, before you leave."
Mhm.
What? And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Like,
Really? That's a tall order. Like,
it's a way tall order, and
yeah.
did this process on me, and I was like, "What the hell just happened?" And
Mhm.
one of the other members of the group at the time came up to me a couple hours later in the day and said, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing amazing, but really, I just want to check this out." And she's
Mhm.
like, I'll sit with you." So I
Mhm.
sat there and I told her that entire story, soup to nuts, A to Z, as easy as I was giving a weather report. It just was done. It didn't trigger me at all anymore.
Mm.
And so that's then when I really started amping up my study even more and realizing that you actually can transform a person's life in as little as a single conversation. And fast forward to today, and hundreds of people trained and thousands of lives later, here we are.
Now, are there any common themes when you work with clients who are coming from a business background, from coming from an entrepreneurship background, that you see that there's this thing about business ownership that that we may not even be aware of? Is there any common themes for that particular career?
That's a great question. Um, and I don't think I have anything, revolutionary to say here, other
Mm-hmm.
in this context, other than the life the life of a entrepreneur and the requirements to be a successful entrepreneur are extraordinarily different than somebody who's in the E quadrant, who's an employee. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's long hours, there's uncertainty, there's
Uh-huh.
there's rejection, there's the things that don't go so well. These are things that I think entrepreneurs know all too well, and can say, "Yep, that makes sense. I put in some long hours,
Mm-hmm.
and the work is truly never done. Is truly
Yeah.
never. I mean, I could walk away from my computer, my desk for the day or what have you, and I could say I'm going to call it a day, but it doesn't mean that there's not a whole stack waiting for me. I mean, the work can literally just not end.
Yeah.
And so I think more than anything else, when I think of that, Nelson, is this
Yeah.
is entrepreneurs. Um, I really bring it back to fundamentals and basics and smashing stigma, which is what I'm passionate about. Entrepreneurs, you know, they're go-getters. They're
Yeah,
they're
we are.
they're absolutely go-getters. They're resilient people. They're people that have some tolerance for risk, more so
Mm-hmm.
than others. And as such, it could be a category of people that can quickly fall into, well, I got this. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. I'll make it happen. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I figured out this obstacle and I figured out this challenge, and this is what I'm supposed to do as an entrepreneur. And then when it comes to something that's impacting their own wellness, emotional wellness, mental wellness, the same logic might get applied, and it could be a setup, because
Mm-hmm.
as we already established, this is not a function of intelligence. This is not a function of problem solving. Entrepreneurs are amazing problem solvers. They're intelligent, resilient, resourceful people. They know how to get answers. They know how to get things done. They know how to respond to challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say more than anything else is we have to smash stigma. Entrepreneurs out there, Your brain, there's wake up call. There's nothing special about your brain. Your
Really?
sorry, man. Your brain is just like everybody else's brain. As such,
Yeah.
you wouldn't leave your gallbladder in the hallway when you went into the meeting. It's
Mhm.
ridiculous. Same thing with your brain. It's okay to realize, let me get a little bit of coaching. Let me school up. Another way to think about this is this: anyone who really excels in this world, go way top level, high level. Take take, you know, top athletes, take Michael Jordan. Well, people these days people might say LeBron. I'm still a Jordan guy. But, take LeBron, take Kobe, take Jordan, take people who are excelling, right? What do they have around them? They have not only a coach, but a team of coaches. They have
Uh-huh.
they have their physical conditioning coach. They have their financial coach. Hopefully, more athletes take advantage of that. They have their financial coach. They have their the sports psychologist, their mental wellness coach. They have a team of coaches around them. People that are at top level are completely good with getting coaching. So
Mhm.
entrepreneurs, any entrepreneurs out there listening, know this, know this. There's no shame in this game at all. It's like if anything, it's going to help you level up. Do yourself that favor.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that piece of advice because many of us meet on a regular basis, and many of us take these courses and stuff, and many of us are in these learning pods and for networking and support. And one of the key traits that is taught all the time: don't go into business by yourself. Do not try to do this in the E quadrant. You are moving out of E and S, who are either working for someone else or self-sustaining, maybe, but you burn out a whole lot. When you're moving into the B quadrant, you really do have to develop a team around you, which includes mentors, which includes advisors, which includes people who are going to be pointing out things in the way you are, the way you compose yourself, any of the memories that are obviously coming back up, in order to, again, in your words, to level up, because you're moving into a totally different level of life and a totally different level of performance altogether. And I love that reminder, and a reminder for anyone in Investor Party. We are in a giant network, but we it's in everyone's best interest to work under direct supervision of several people, because everyone's going to have their perspective and everyone's going to have their experiences. So thanks for that reminder.
Yeah, my pleasure. Beautifully stated. That's you hit the nail on the head. It really is. And when you look at top top performing people across various industries, you could look at people in sales. You could look at people in my industry. I mean, I have my mentors. I have my people who help school me and coach me to this level. Anybody who from athletes to salespeople, entrepreneurs, people who are really excelling, there's a team of coaches. And I think when you acknowledge that there could be a blind spot, that
Mm,
I might have this blind spot, and this person over here perhaps can help me with this particular blind spot, that's only going to be of value to everybody that you're serving. That's another way to think about it.
oh, okay.
Like if you get outside of yourself and you think about it, like in my industry, and I would dare say in just about any industry, at the end of any product, at the end of any service, at the end of any communication, email, text, is a human, is a person.
Amen.
We are serving people. And if you
Mm,
think about, if I can address this blind spot, if I could sand down this area of roughness that I have, or this thing that kind of like triggers me or sets me off, then I become more effective for the people that I serve, and they are the direct beneficiaries of it.
mm. Now, let's say that you come across a client, and you know what, Michael, it's what I went through as a kid. I really, really don't want to revisit. It's a dark place. Do I really have to? How would you respond to any of these clients where the trauma and the story around that trauma is pretty much debilitating, and they really are resistant to explore that?
Oh, well, thank you so much for asking that question. Truly,
Mhm.
that is beautiful question. First thing that I would share with the group here is this: is I don't believe in the existence of resistance.
Okay.
I don't think that people are being purposefully resistant. This is another word. I'm not sure about other industries, but certainly in the therapy field, this is a word that providers love to label clients.
Hmm.
I'll say this in a train. I'll be doing master classes and I'll say, oh, they're in denial or they're avoidant. Or what's the other thing we call them? And the whole class says resistance. I said, yeah.
Many of us have seen that. Many of us have been in there.
And I said, you no longer, if you're in my master class, I said, you no longer get the luxury of calling people resistant. They're not resistant. What the
Mhm.
problem is you have to learn how to be more effective and up your skill and competence in connecting with people. Think of it like this: resistance is what we call when we're trying to get subconscious material up into the conscious, particularly if the
Mm,
material in the subconscious is painful.
you're
And
right.
you, therapist, counselor, coach, are trying to get it up into the conscious awareness so they could talk about it and they don't want to. We call that resistance. No, I call that pretty freaking normal. Who wants to purposely just expose themselves to pain? I'm putting
Hmm.
I'm putting my hand in this flame, in this fire. And how long am I going to leave it there? I'm ripping it out quickly, right? Because it's part of the way we're wired is not to expose ourselves to pain. There's survival purpose there. So,
Hmm. Hmm. Makes
um,
sense.
so just to say that, first of all, I don't believe in the existence of resistance. Um,
Hmm.
I, I think, it's a quite a normal thing that people experience. The second thing, and the biggest thing why I'm so excited about your question is this. You'll remember I mentioned efficiency, effectiveness, and process. Process. The
Huh.
process of brain optimization and getting things resolved, particularly when there's pain related to the past,
Hmm.
does not require, it's not a prerequisite or an expectation that the individual relive or re-experience any of that pain.
Really?
We can get things resolved with the absence of any reliving of pain. Now, that is dramatically different
Yeah.
than what's out there. And I remember when I first went back at the time when I was first receiving all kinds of training, I was working as a director and I went back to my outpatient therapy team. And I said, hey guys, I said, think about all the folks you've been working with and it's kind of stalled, it's been stuck, and maybe they have a trauma. And I'm interested. I was probably speaking a little more confidently than I should have at the time, being I was very newly trained, but I was just so
Yeah.
excited. I said, I'm interested in spending one visit with them. At the conclusion of that visit, I'm interested in being such that the trauma no longer bothers them. And I'm interested in doing it in a way where it's like kind of fun. We actually have some fun during the visit. There's no pain. And they all looked at me
Mhm.
like I was bananas. They said, great, you're the director. Have you forgot what trauma is? And I, and I said, no, no, not so much. I've learned these different ways of doing things. And so thankfully, a few of them were brave enough to take me up on that offer and sent me some referrals. But yes, Nelson, it is not, and I'm not going to say that that's 100%, right? It's not, nothing is.
Mhm.
Anybody says something's 100%, watch out anyway. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
so it's not 100%, but I can tell you the percentage is really, really high to so many people that I've worked with in getting res- past trauma resolved where there was lots of pain, where there was zero pain experienced in the process of getting it cleared up. This is one of the biggest reasons why I'm so passionate about this. You've seen me out there on LinkedIn constantly cranking messaging out. This is why, because the alternative, I know what the alternative is. I used to facilitate the alternative. It's having these people relive and re-experience and talk about this horror that they've already been through. And what that's actually doing is strengthening the neural pathways of stuckness.
Mm. Mhm. I'm glad that you made that distinction because I'll speak on behalf of myself, even exploring some of these traumatic events, it still raises my heart rate. It still raises my anxiety to the point that I really, really, really don't want to do it. And then I just want to move on with my life. But there's that advice, and we're like, Nelson, you just need to let it go. And I think many people have been advised, or it's like whatever conflict that you have, just let it go. But it's hard. And so if there's access to it that I can, and it would show me any way that I can without actually exploring all of those negative feelings, yeah, I'm all for it. I really do want to move on with my life, but sometimes it's just hard.
You know what? I feel that, Nelson. People do. They do absolutely want to move on with it, and this is why, this is why I've thrown myself in the uncomfort zone of even starting off with doing videos. I'm very comfortable talking to people. I wasn't so comfortable talking to my cell phone recording videos, but I wanted this message out there. And and I've seen so much hurt and then so much damage to people's evaluation of themselves, because then they start to think, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get better? I've been seeing this therapist for 3 years. What's wrong with me? Maybe I don't want to get better. And then they hear all these little fancy buzzwords in the therapy and self-help community about things like self-sabotage, and maybe you're getting something out of it. No, it's people. I'm sorry. My thinking on this is no. People are not purposely wanting to be miserable. It's just their brain hasn't been updated, and maybe people they've connected with haven't had the capacity to do that in such a way. And I'm not trying to be, I don't think the providers, please understand this. I don't think that the providers are being malicious, or that they're just looking at it as a business model and they keep them coming back. I hope, like the overwhelming majority, that's not the case. I don't believe that to be true. I know when I was practicing before, I didn't know how to do this. And I was doing the best that I knew how to do. So please understand that while I'm passionate about this, I'm certainly not pointing a finger or accusing or blaming so many well-meaning providers. I really believe that. Yeah.
And I think it's a beautiful avenue and a wonderful option for many, because as you and I talk, we are philanthropists also. So we work with a lot of communities and work with a lot of people who are dealing with trauma and just experiences, and they too want to move on, but also they're in a current state of mind where they obviously need extra help. I mean, we work with people who are homeless, veterans, at-risk youth, formerly incarcerated. So giving them an option to see their brain, how they are working, in order to improve the quality of life. I think you provide an incredible opportunity, you and your field. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being in existence also. So and everything that you do also. So while I still have you also, another thing that intrigued me also, segue out of this, is that you are also a real estate investor also. That's why I wanted to take you in an investor party too. You have a couple properties yourself too, right, Michael?
Yeah, I dabble. I dabble. I first learned about, I thought what diversification used to mean was if it was diversified in the stock market, if I had a telecommunications stock and I had an entertainment stock and I had a pharmaceutical stock and then I had a mutual fund, I was diversified. Well, then what happened, when was this? This was I think shortly after 2000. The market came crashing down.
I remember that.
My whole portfolio just went south, and I thought, well, there's nothing. Doesn't matter what sector I'm in. And so then I thought about the idea of diversifying further by getting into real estate. And if the market tanks, hey, I got some property appreciating and some cash flow coming in. And so I invested in a duplex, which was my first acquisition, was a duplex. And then acquired several other multi-units over. I read the I read the Robert Kiyosaki book. I read,
as we all did,
Rich Dad Poor Dad and Cash Flow Quadrant, and I think I I walked into that year with 2 units, and after reading that book, I walked out with 8 units, and then I acquired a couple more units. So I just, that book really lit a fire. Um, I did reach a point where I thought I either have to turn this over to property management or stay where I was, as I was
Mm-hmm.
questioning being in my field. And
Mm-hmm.
then ultimately I got this new passion, and so I stayed where I was as far as the real estate side of things, and didn't pursue further growth at that time. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I've been investing in property since it's been about 17 years.
You're part of our community now. We're going to work partnering together and giving back to the community also. So, do any charity work? Do you give back?
It varies. There'll be things, for example, when COVID first hit, I made my services available for no charge to, a certain number of people. I couldn't, um,
Of course.
but so I offered, free services. I'll do that. I'll do different things as far as, volunteering or donating items. So yeah, there's different. Just yesterday, literally, I was at the grocery store picking up a bunch of items that are going to be donated. So I'll do, different things, um, kind of as it's sort of like something showing up that there's a need.
Mm-hmm.
There's always need. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of hold my hand to the fire on that. This would be true, but I believe in transparency. So if something shows up that will maybe grab my attention more as a need, then I'll engage.
Right. Well, Michael, you are a wonderful guy, wonderful coach, a great resource. What I love having you in our network, and you have a wonderful heart. If anybody in Investor Party wanted to get in touch with you, what is the best way? How do they get in touch with you?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So you could go to my website, which is michaelcortina.com. Michael, Michael, Cortina.com. And you can certainly find me on LinkedIn as well. On my website, there's ways to contact me through there, so that might be the most direct access.
Uh,
And I mean,
well,
if you wanted to reach out directly, that's particularly if there's got some stuff to get done and I want to serve, you could call me. You could call me 219-405-7809. It's fine.
and thank you so much for your time, Michael. You are great. Welcome to Investor Party. We too love talking about mental health and all the different aspects that relate to entrepreneurship and all the different ways, as well as real estate, of course. So and giving back to the community. So welcome to the family, Michael. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an amazing group. As I mentioned, when I found out what you were doing, and the education and the give back to the communities and working with homeless, I was thrilled to be here. I appreciate all of your time in having me here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. And thank you, everyone. I will see you next time. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.